For many LGBTQ+ individuals, identity is not something that appears fully formed. It is something discovered, sometimes slowly, sometimes quietly, sometimes through confusion, pressure, and growth. For years, the world expected people to define themselves clearly, to choose a label, to explain who they are, to fit into something understandable. But identity does not always follow rules, and it does not always follow timing. Artists like Isaac Dunbar, Brendan Urie, Ben Whishaw, Mika, and Grayson Chance represent different paths within the LGBTQ+ experience. Some begin openly, some grow into themselves over time, some challenge labels, others reject them completely, but all of them share one thing: they exist honestly. Through music, presence, and personal journey, they show that LGBTQ+ identity is not one story. It is not one moment. It is not one definition. It is a process. And that process is valid at every stage. Isaac Dunbar, starting with freedom, not fear. Isaac Dunbar represents something rare in LGBTQ+ visibility, a beginning without hiding. Many LGBTQ+ artists build their careers in stages. First success, then silence, then eventually truth. But Isaac's journey does not follow that pattern. He starts with truth. From the moment he entered the music scene, his identity was not something he needed to reveal later. It was already there, visible, integrated, and unapologetic. That alone marks a shift between generations, because for a long time, LGBTQ+ identity was treated as something risky, something to manage, something to reveal carefully. Isaac does not manage it. He lives it. That difference is powerful. His music reflects this freedom. It does not treat queerness as a theme. It treats it as a natural part of expression. Love, emotion, self-image, and identity all exist together without separation. There is no need to explain, no need to justify, no need to make it acceptable. It already is. For LGBTQ+ audiences, especially younger ones, this creates something that previous generations rarely had: a starting point without fear. Instead of asking, "Will I be accepted?" the question becomes, "How do I express myself?" And that shift changes everything. Because identity is no longer about survival. It becomes about expression. Isaac Dunbar represents that transition. He shows that queerness does not have to be introduced as something difficult. It can exist naturally, without tension, without conflict, without needing to be defended. That normalization is one of the most important steps in LGBTQ+ progress. Because once identity is seen as normal, it stops being questioned. His presence also challenges another expectation: the idea that young artists must shape themselves to fit the industry. Isaac does the opposite. He brings his full identity into the space and lets the space adjust around him. And that creates influence. Because when audiences grow up seeing artists who are openly themselves from the beginning, it changes what they expect from the world. It raises the standard for authenticity. It removes the idea that identity must be delayed. More importantly, Isaac represents confidence without apology. He does not frame queerness as something fragile. He does not present it as something that needs protection. He treats it as something natural, strong, and fully integrated into who he is. That perspective is powerful for LGBTQ+ individuals who have been taught, directly or indirectly, that they need to be careful, to be quiet, or to adjust themselves to fit in. Isaac shows the opposite. You can start out already whole. You can exist without shrinking. You can be seen without fear. And when that message is repeated enough, through music, through visibility, through presence, it begins to reshape culture. Because culture follows what it sees. And what it sees in Isaac Dunbar is a version of LGBTQ+ identity that is not defined by struggle, not limited by expectation, and not controlled by acceptance, but by freedom. Isaac Dunbar is not just part of LGBTQ+ representation. He represents what happens when identity is no longer something you have to fight for, but something you are already allowed to be. Brendan Urie, fluid identity and freedom beyond labels. Brendan Urie represents a form of LGBTQ+ identity that refuses to stay inside boundaries. In a world where people are often expected to define themselves clearly, to choose a label, to explain who they are, to fit into a category, Brendan challenges that expectation. He does not limit himself. By openly identifying as pansexual, he introduces something that many people are still learning to understand: that attraction is not always fixed, and identity is not always defined by one direction. That idea is powerful. Because for many LGBTQ+ individuals, especially those who feel like they exist between labels, identity can feel restrictive. There is pressure to explain yourself in a way that others can understand, even if it does not fully reflect who you are. Brendan removes that pressure. He shows that identity can be fluid, that attraction can change, that you do not need to confine yourself to a single definition, and that freedom matters. His presence in mainstream music also plays an important role. Rock and pop spaces have historically been shaped by traditional ideas of masculinity. While more open than before, they still carry expectations about how male artists should present themselves, how they should behave, and how they should define identity. Brendan Urie disrupts that, not through confrontation, but through existence. He does not separate his identity from his success. He proves that being fluid, being undefined, and being open does not limit your ability to reach the highest level of the industry. It expands it. For LGBTQ+ audiences, this creates recognition, especially for those who do not feel fully represented by traditional labels, those who feel like their identity is more complex, more flexible, or still evolving. Brendan represents them. He shows that you do not need to fully define yourself to be valid. You do not need to fit into a category to belong. You do not need to choose a label to be real. You can exist in between. And that in between is not confusion. It is identity. His influence also helps shift a deeper cultural idea, the belief that identity must be stable to be understood. Brendan challenges that. He proves that identity can move, grow, and change over time. That self-understanding is not a fixed point, but a process, and that process is valid at every stage. For LGBTQ+ individuals, this message is essential, because many people spend years trying to understand themselves, trying to find the right label, trying to explain who they are in a way that feels complete. Brendan removes the need for that completeness. He replaces it with freedom. Freedom to feel, freedom to explore, freedom to exist without needing to define everything. And in a world that constantly asks for explanations, that kind of freedom is powerful. Brendan Urie does not represent a single identity. He represents the space between identities. A space that is often misunderstood, often overlooked, but deeply real. And by existing openly within that space, he makes it visible. He makes it valid. And most importantly, he makes it possible for others to see themselves in it. In Ben Whishaw, softness, vulnerability, and a different kind of strength. Ben Whishaw represents a form of LGBTQ+ visibility that does not rely on volume, but on presence. He is not loud, he is not performative, he does not turn identity into spectacle. And yet, his impact is undeniable. In a world where masculinity is often defined by dominance, control, and emotional distance, Ben Whishaw offers something different: softness. That softness is not weakness. It is resistance. Because for many LGBTQ+ individuals, especially those who do not fit traditional masculine expectations, there is pressure to perform strength in a way that feels unnatural, to hide emotion, to appear controlled, to avoid being seen as too different. Ben rejects that without needing to say it. Through his roles, his voice, and his presence, he embodies vulnerability. He allows emotion to exist openly. He does not suppress it to appear stronger. And that changes perception. Because when people see a successful, respected figure who does not conform to rigid masculinity, it expands what masculinity can be. For LGBTQ+ audiences, this is deeply important. It creates space for those who feel like they do not belong in traditional definitions, those who are quieter, those who are softer, those who do not want to perform strength in a way that feels forced. Ben Whishaw represents them. He shows that you do not need to become something else to be accepted. You do not need to harden yourself to be respected. You do not need to hide your sensitivity to belong. You can exist as you are. His visibility also challenges another expectation: that LGBTQ+ identity must always be explained or emphasized. Ben does not constantly speak about his identity. He does not center everything around it. He simply lives openly. And that is powerful, because it normalizes LGBTQ+ identity in a different way. not as something that needs to be highlighted, but as something that exists naturally within a person's life. For many people, this kind of representation feels closer to reality. Not everyone is loud. Not everyone wants to stand out. Not everyone defines themselves through identity alone. Ben Whishaw shows that this is valid. He creates a version of LGBTQ+ visibility that is calm, grounded, and deeply human. And in doing so, he changes something important. He shifts the idea of strength. Strength is no longer about control. It is about honesty. It is about allowing yourself to feel. It is about existing without forcing yourself to fit expectations. For the LGBTQ+ community, this message is essential. Because acceptance does not always come from changing who you are. Sometimes it comes from realizing you never needed to change at all. Ben Whishaw does not redefine identity through confrontation. He redefines it through presence. A presence that is quiet, but powerful enough to expand how the world understands both masculinity and queerness. And in that quiet expansion, there is space for people who have never seen themselves represented before. A space where softness is not something to hide, but something to own. Mika, joy, color, and the freedom to be fully yourself. Mika represents a side of LGBTQ+ identity that is often overlooked, but deeply needed: joy. For many years, queer identity has been framed through struggle. Stories of rejection, fear, and hardship have dominated representation. While those experiences are real, they are not the full picture. Mika shows the other side. He shows what it looks like to live freely. From his music to his personality, everything about Mika is expressive, colorful, and unapologetically alive. He does not present identity as something heavy or complicated. He presents it as something natural, something that belongs. And that changes the narrative. Because when LGBTQ+ identity is seen through joy, it stops being defined only by difficulty. It becomes something that can be celebrated. Mika's music reflects that energy. It is vibrant. It is emotional. It is full of life. But beneath that brightness is something deeper: confidence in identity. He does not question who he is. He does not minimize it. He does not adjust it to be accepted. He lives it fully. For LGBTQ+ audiences, this creates something powerful. Not just recognition, but possibility. Because seeing someone exist openly and happily sends a different message than seeing someone survive. It says that life does not stop at acceptance. It begins there. This is especially important for younger people. For those who are still discovering themselves, still navigating identity, still trying to understand where they fit, Mika offers a vision of the future. A future where identity is not something to hide, not something to explain, not something to fight for every day, but something to enjoy. He turns queerness into something visible in a positive way, not through conflict but through expression. Through music, color, and personality, he shows that identity can be something creative, something beautiful. And that perspective matters, because representation is not just about showing that LGBTQ+ people exist. It is about showing how they can live. Mika expands that understanding. He proves that being queer is not only about surviving in a world that is changing, it is about thriving in it. His presence also challenges another idea, that LGBTQ+ identity must always be serious to be respected. Mika rejects that. He shows that lightness does not reduce meaning. Joy does not weaken identity. Expression does not make you less valid. If anything, it makes you more real. Mika does not just represent LGBTQ+ identity. He celebrates it, and in doing so, he gives people something that is just as important as visibility: hope. Hope that life can be full. Hope that identity can be embraced. Hope that being yourself is not only possible, but something worth enjoying. And that kind of representation does more than inspire. It changes how people see themselves, and when that changes, everything else begins to follow. Grace and Chance, growing into truth and owning your identity. Grace and Chance represents a side of LGBTQ+ identity that is deeply real, but often less talked about: growth over time. Not everyone understands who they are from the beginning. Not everyone is ready to be open immediately. Not everyone has the space to discover themselves privately. Grayson's journey reflects that reality. He entered the spotlight at a very young age, long before he had the chance to fully understand his own identity. Fame came first, visibility came first, and like many LGBTQ+ individuals, he had to navigate that visibility while still figuring himself out. That process is not easy, because when the world is watching, there is pressure to know who you are, to present a clear identity, to be understood, but identity does not always work that way. It takes time. Grayson's story shows that time is valid. When he eventually came out publicly, it was not framed as a sudden transformation. It was a continuation of something that had always been there, something that he had come to understand and accept, and that acceptance matters. Because for many LGBTQ+ individuals, the hardest part is not how others see them, it is how they see themselves. Grayson represents that internal journey, the confusion, the questioning, the gradual understanding, and finally, the acceptance. His music reflects this evolution. It becomes more personal, more honest, more connected to who he truly is. There is a sense of clarity that comes not from perfection, but from truth. And that truth resonates. For LGBTQ+ audiences, especially those still in the process of discovering themselves, Grayson's story provides something essential: reassurance. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need to rush your identity. You are allowed to grow into who you are. That message is powerful, because in many spaces, there is pressure to define yourself quickly, to choose a label, to explain your identity in a way that others can understand. Grayson removes that pressure. He shows that identity is not a fixed point, it is a journey, and every step of that journey is valid. His visibility also highlights an important truth. Coming out is not a single moment. It is a process of understanding yourself, of accepting yourself, of learning to live openly in your own way. Grayson Chance represents that process with honesty. He does not present a perfect story, he presents a real one. And in that reality, people find themselves. Because many LGBTQ+ individuals do not see their lives reflected in dramatic, instant transformations. They see it in slow growth, in quiet realizations, in moments of clarity that come over time. Grayson represents those moments. He shows that you are not late. You are not behind. You are not doing it wrong. You are simply becoming yourself. And that is enough. Grayson Chance does not just represent LGBTQ+ identity. He represents its journey. A journey that is not always clear, not always easy, but always valid. And in that journey, there is something more important than perfection. There is truth. And once you reach that truth, everything begins to make sense. LGBTQ+ visibility is often measured by how loudly someone speaks, how clearly they define themselves, or how boldly they challenge the world. But visibility is more than that. It is about truth. The truth of starting out already free. The truth of existing between labels. The truth of growing into who you are over time. The truth of expressing joy, softness, and identity in your own way. These stories remind us that there is no single way to be LGBTQ+. You do not need to follow a timeline. You do not need to fit into a category. You do not need to explain yourself to be real. Identity is not something you prove. It is something you become. And in a world that is still learning to understand that every honest voice, loud or quiet, moves us closer to a place where being yourself is not questioned, but accepted.